The conflict between the left and the right is a very fundamental conflict, which goes beyond simply the economic policies of the government. In reality, it's due to a difference in how people view the world and how they think the world functions. This difference has many different aspects to it, but one of the most important differences between a leftist and a rightist is the ability to comprehend second-order effects, with the left generally focusing on the first-order effect of issues, policies and events, while the right wing has the ability to see second-order effects. But what do the first-order or second-order effects mean? The first-order effect is that when something happens, it usually has immediate effects, which are directly because of the action or event taking place. But second-order effects mean that those effects of the initial action might have effects of their own, and those secondary effects might also have their own effects, and so on. Now, to give an example, we can look at the agricultural reforms of Mao Zedong. When Mao Zedong wanted to improve the agriculture of China, he would notice that a portion of the agricultural produce was being eaten away by sparrows. So he ordered Chinese people to start killing sparrows, because when you kill the sparrows, they won't eat the crops, right? And that was the first order effect. Kill sparrows, sparrows don't eat crops. But what happened after that was that this policy had second order effects. Because while it was true that the sparrows would eat a portion of the crops, they would also eat many of the pests that also damaged the crops. So when they killed the sparrows, the pests that were up until that point kept in check because of the sparrows started to grow exponentially, and they would both start eating the crops and damaging the plants. And this would devastate agriculture in China, and would be one of the reasons behind the Great Famine of Mao Zedong, which according to some estimates killed up to 30 million people. And this happened because Mao Zedong failed to take into account the second-order effects of his policies. And when you look at most leftist ideologies of all types around the world, a common characteristic of all of them is their failure to see second-order effects. And this is where we get to the topic of today's video, the fact that more and more leftist-run cities in the West and around the world have started the policy to give safe injection sites for drug use. What's the reason behind this policy? The reason behind this policy is that many leftists would observe drug users that would share syringes for taking drugs, and because they shared these syringes, they would pass on any dangerous diseases they had, such as AIDS. These leftists would see this and think, these people have contracted AIDS because they shared syringes, so if we get each one of them their own syringe, they wouldn't get AIDS anymore and everything would be fine. That is the first order effect. Not having individual syringes equals AIDS, so us giving them syringes equals no AIDS. But the second order effect of this was that it facilitated drug use. It normalizes drug use by the fact that the government is giving a quite explicit recognition to using drugs. So the taboo is no longer as great as it used to be, and it started to be seen as less of a wrongdoing and more of a social issue like homelessness. And again, because it is easier for drug users to take drugs, drug users are going to take more drugs, and more people are going to take drugs again because they are removing a lot of the difficulties that existed for taking drugs. And as we can see in many leftist-run cities such as San Francisco, drug use and drug-addicted homeless people are clearly on the rise, and in some cities they are by all means out of control. And this is the second-order effect of a policy that only focuses on solving an immediate problem, but fails to have a broad scope when it comes to analyzing the problem and the consequences of its supposed solution. And this is the problem we see with many other leftist policies as well. Another example which I want to talk about is the issue of single mothers. After the sexual revolution of the 60s and the normalization of sex outside of marriage, Western nations started facing a rising problem of single mother households. Naturally, many of these single mother families were facing serious financial problems and were living in poverty. So the leftists saw this and said, well, if we give them money and free stuff, they won't be poor anymore. Again, focusing on the first order effect. Now, disregarding the problem of taxpayers being forced to pay for the mistakes of other people, we should look at the consequences of welfare programs for single parent families. Once the government started guaranteeing financial support for single mothers, the potential risk of being a single mother went down, and women were no longer as afraid of becoming a single mother, because it no longer meant abject poverty, although they were still relatively poor, just not on the brink of starvation. The government will take care of us, they thought. Because of this, many women became more relaxed when it came to sexual relations, and this led to more women becoming pregnant out of marriage, and more poverty. And that's how a solution which was meant to stop poverty actually ended up increasing it, because leftists are incapable of second-order thinking. And when you look at the history of leftist policies, From the collectivization of the Soviet Union to policies such as welfare and immigration, they all suffer from the same problem, which always leads to disastrous results. Leave a comment and let us know what you think. Share this video if you liked it, and thank you all for watching. Goodbye.